Restaurant Unstoppable. What the most successful restaurateurs know that you don't. Anything like reflecting back at that time, knowing what you know now that you would have done differently if you had known it then?
I think I don't know that I would have done anything different in those early years, because the person that we brought in who kind of took that operational leadership role was really highly skilled. Unfortunately, that person stayed with us for he left and then came back to us and ultimately, worked for us for 8 or 9 years. And unfortunately, there was a pretty negative falling out that occurred subsequently that probably lends a lot to, kind of life lessons, is just how much you should entrust someone with your business. Like, you still have to keep, no matter what, you really have to always know your own numbers and always, really monitor and make sure that, your team knows they still work for you, and that you are ultimately the one that they feel the connection with. So never let yourself get so disconnected from the business that somebody else can kind of undermine your position and relationship to the staff.
Okay. So what checks and balances can we put in place to make sure that we're tracking and keeping our thumb on the financials and all these things?
So I think there's really, it's kind of back to that idea of what I usually call like routine and standard work. So what are the things you do? How do you write your calendar that you live your work life by, that says like, every morning I look at these numbers, or every evening I look at these numbers, and I read this end of shift report and I ask these questions. You eventually could get to a size, like we did, where I couldn't look at every shift report every day. And that was probably around 8 to 10 restaurants. Then, my brain was going to explode.
Yeah.
But really knowing, in those instances, like my husband signed every single check up until about a year and a half ago. So when you're the one signing the checks, you know who the checks are going to, there's no funny business, like, hey, this amount for this vendor seems out of line. Why is this bill so high this week? Those sorts of things. So there's, having those routines, really looking at like for us, we used prime cost as our real tracking measure. And so we put that in place very early on, where we had a prime cost goal and we had our managers input and track in an Excel spreadsheet. That was a template that I got from restaurantowner.com.
Yep.
That, what was their labor and what was their food cost spend.
So prime cost, for anybody who doesn't know, is your total expenses for food, right? And your total expenses for labor.
Right. It's your two biggest levers that you actually have some level of control over, right? Like, you can't control your rent once you sign that lease. Once you sign for insurance, it is what it is. There's other things that are controllable but at a lesser level, like utilities, but food cost and labor cost are the two levers that you can really move around and move the dial, influence, in order to run a successful business.
Got you. So you're tracking your prime costs.
On a daily basis. We were tracking prime cost and then really like meeting and discussing it on a weekly basis once we had multiple restaurants.
Got it. I'm loving this conversation, but you're getting into like the nitty gritty, the details, and this is the stuff we love.